Hi, this is Denise Mathew, and today I've got 3 charts to do for the subscriber charts for June 2019. And the first chart is for the birthday March 26, 1964. Let's talk about the first chart that I have here. So if we look at the type, you can see that this is somebody who is a projector type. I already have 2 videos made on projector types, so if you want to find out more information, just check those out. So I'm just going to give a brief overview. Projectors make up 20% of the population of all types, and they are here to guide and direct generator types. Projectors are intensely wise about the human experience, and they have very valuable and sage advice to give only if they've been asked for it, because a projector strategy is to have an invitation or recognition before they give advice, because if they don't wait, a lot of times they'll be giving advice and it won't be received as they want it to be received. And if a projector type doesn't wait for an invitation or recognition, they can come across as being pushy and they may be ignored. And if this happens, it's kind of a disappointment for the projector, and they can get bitter because they do have good advice for people, and it just has to be right timing and an invitation or recognition for it to be received exactly the way a projector intends it to be. And the best advice for somebody who's a projector type is that don't throw your pearls before swine, because projector types are here for only a specific group of people, and those people will find the projector, and when they do, they'll be guided by that projector. But it'll only be after they've been recognized for what they can give, the information they can give. And when this happens, a projector can do exactly what they're meant to do. They can guide and direct people and help them in the journey of life. So if we move on to the profile, we can see this person is a 3-5 profile. I have a video on the 3-5 profile as well, and I'll leave the link below. So if you want to find out more about the 3-5 profile, you can check that out. Briefly, the 3-5 profile is made up of the line 3 and the line 5. The line 3 is called the martyr or the experimenter, and the line 5 is called the heretic, also called the teacher. The first number is always going to be the conscious sun, and the second number is always going to be the unconscious sun. And the first number is considered something that you're more aware of, and the second number is something that you become more aware of after the age of 40, but other people might see this part of you very easily. So somebody who carries a 3-5 profile is somebody who is a conscious experimenter. That means they experiment with life in all forms, relationships, jobs, anything that they really encounter in life. They're very experimental people. And the reason why they experiment is so that they can show people what works and what doesn't work. And the 5 energy is all about the teaching energy or sharing energy. So what an experimental person does with this energy is they start to share and teach, and they universalize the information that they've learned during their experimental phase. And the experimental phase for somebody who carries a 3-5 profile is usually considered about 0 to 40 years of age. After 40 years of age, they may have learned a lot of information about what works and what doesn't work. And because of that, they may be more selective in what they do in their lives and who they talk to and the relationships that they have. The person with this chart is beyond the age of 40, so they may be more aware of what works and what doesn't work. And the most important thing with somebody with a 3-5 profile is to always continue to experiment no matter what, because as we know, experiments don't always work out exactly the way we expect them to. And because of this, they can sometimes get frustrated and feel like they're being blamed, because having the 5th energy, a lot of people have expectations of what these people can deliver. So the big trick with somebody with the 3-5 profile is to continue to experiment, to understand that this is part of who they are, and without their information, the rest of us would really definitely be missing something. And one last thing about this 3-5 profile is that it's an interpersonal journey, and that means that it's all about the person learning more about themselves based on the relationships and experiences they have in their life, so they can grow as individuals. And when we're talking about the lines of any of the gates, every line has that specific energy in it. So for instance, any gate that has a line 3 beside it means that that gate is experimental for that individual. So different gates have different numbers, as we can always see. So it just gives an added dimension to the gates so you can understand more about how they're going to work in your body graph. So if we look at this chart in particular, we can see that the 39 has a line 3 energy, the 64 has a line 3 energy, also the 17, the 18, and also the 23. We'll talk more about the gates in a few minutes, but I just wanted to mention that just so you could see that the lines actually have a lot more meaning to them, and you can pull more and more information from your body graph the more you look at it. So if we look at the open centers, we can see that this person has an open throat, an open identity, also an open sacral, which all non-generator types will have. Whenever somebody has an open center, that means that the energy is inconsistent for them, and it's usually based on the people that they're with. When somebody has an open throat center, that means that they have an ability to modify their voice. A lot of people who have an open throat center can be really gifted singers, or they might have an ability to talk to a lot of different people and be able to modulate their tone and their voice based on the audience that they're with. A lot of people who have this energy can really speak well, but the only way that they can speak well or be received in the best possible way is if they're recognized. Energetically, unless you have a motor to the throat like manifestors or manifesting generators, unless you've been recognized in a conversation or for your opinion or something like that, people may feel that somebody who has this energy may be talking too much or trying to cut in on conversations. So the best way to use the energy of the open throat is to have a recognition or to be invited into a conversation. And when they're invited into a conversation, then they can be heard exactly the way they want to be. Because this person has a fifth line energy, they're going to be noticed everywhere they go anyway. So most times anybody who has a fifth line energy will be invited into conversations or noticed or recognized. Being recognized can be as easy as somebody saying hello. And once someone has said hello, then you are in the conversation. So it doesn't have to be a big production as to someone inviting you into a conversation. It just means that this person is just acknowledge that you're there and acknowledge that they want to talk to you. And in human design, the natural state for somebody with an open throat is considered silence. Somebody with an open throat who is silent is energetically sending out a vibration that tells people that they have something important to say. It sounds unusual, but sometimes the less you talk, the more you're invited into conversations. And then once you're invited into a conversation, you can talk up as much as you like. People with an open throat have to be careful about their throat. They can overuse their throat. There can be thyroid issues, and there can also be laryngitis that can happen when they've just talked too much. So again, going back to the silence and resting their throat and taking care of the throat will benefit them in the long run. And one more thing about the throat center is that just because you have a defined throat or a brown square instead of a white square doesn't mean you have a motorized throat. All projectors will not have a motorized throat, and all generator types, plain generator types, will not have a motorized throat either. The only ones who have the motorized throat are the manifestors and the manifesting generators. So just to keep in mind that if you have a brown square instead of a white square, you have a defined throat, but not necessarily a motorized throat. And so because of that, you still need to be invited into conversations. And if we look at the throat some more, we can see that there's only 2 gates that will actually get a motor to the throat. So if this person comes in contact and we have the electromagnetics, which is when you have a hanging gate, somebody with the opposite gate completes your channel, this person would be connected with somebody who has a gate 35 or somebody who has a gate 45, in that would get them a motor to the throat. Otherwise, they really don't have a lot of energy going to the throat. They do have some coming from the ajna, up the green upside down triangle, but that's not a motor. So that's really what they call projected energy, or energy that needs to be called out of you before or invited out of you in order for you to share it in the best possible way. This person also has an open identity. And just like all open centers, the energy is fluid in this area. And so that means that somebody who has an open identity can take on the identity of other people or be influenced by other people who have defined identities. This energy can be problematic for younger children because they can be influenced by groups of people or friendship groups. And since the identity center is considered the seat of the soul, this is a person that can connect soul to soul with people when they meet them. So it's an energy of really seeing people for who they truly are. And the funny part about someone who has an open identity is they may meet somebody who is dressed all up in a suit, looking pretty amazing and very nice and so forth, but then they just get this energy off them that just doesn't feel good. And they could see somebody who completely dresses in an unusual way compared to what they're used to, and they could completely connect with that person. So it's really an energetic where you're connecting with the souls of other people. And if you see, there's only one gate coming off the identity center, and that's the gate 1. The gate 1 is all about fulfilling your need to express yourself creatively in the world. And that can be a creative role model or a creative leadership. But what's most important with this energy is that it's an individual energy. So it's more about just creating for your own well-being rather than creating for other people. And basically by being yourself, you're actually out there doing things and people are looking at you and seeing what you're doing And by being a role model for your creativity, you're inspiring other people as well. And since this is the only gate feeding into the identity center, this would mean that it's really important to the person's sense of identity, because all the energy is being funneled through that one gate. Whenever you have just one gate on an open center, then there's an added emphasis on that specific gate for that specific center. So the kind of energy coming from the one energy is something that'll wake you up in the middle of the night feeling that you need to do something important. And it is in Neptune, which is a generational energy, but sometimes the energy of certain planets can affect us more than they would others, and that's because they're connected with personal planets. And that's more of an astrology thing that I'm talking about. But ultimately, the thing about Neptune is the creative potential or the creative endeavor could be related to spirituality or something like that. And when it's in the fifth line, like it is in this chart, that's somebody who's going to universalize that creative energy and spirituality. Or the other potential is that there could be a murkiness in what they really want to create and put out into the world. This person also has an open will center, and the will center has 3 gates off it, which are quite a few for a will center. Because really the will center only has 4 gates, so they have 3 out of 4. So they're set up to be having a defined will more than they would be set up to have other centers defined. So like for instance, as I just said, the throat center doesn't have much connections that will motorize the throat. You also have the sacral center, which really only has 2 gates that will define it. So if we look at the will center, we have the gate 21, the gate 40, and also the gate 51. And the gate 51 is kind of an interesting gate. I'm going to talk about that first. That's a gate of shock, and it's half of the channel of the shaman, which is the 2551. This is a channel that in its highest expression is meant to shock us into the love of spirit. So basically people who carry this energy can be shocking in the things they say or shocking in the things they do. They can do things unexpectedly that people are surprised by. And they also have the 3955. If we're looking down at the bottom of the chart, the whole channel, which is an energy, an emotional wave that's a very high and low lows. I know that we're still talking about the open centers, but I just wanted to make a connection between the 51 and having the 3955 as well, because both are energy that are trying to push people and the collective into an energy of the spirit or an abundance of spirit in the 55, or also the love of spirit in the 25. So there's a lot of pushing people or provoking people into thinking about things in a different way. And if we get back to the open will center, we see that there's a 21, which is all about control. We also have the 40, which is all about being alone and wanting to be alone, and also the 51, which I just mentioned. The thing about an open will center is a lot of times people who have an open will center may not value what they do. They may undercharge for services that they give. There can be an issue with self-worth, and from a medical standpoint, this person can have issues with their stomach. They can have ulcers or basically indigestion or digestive issues. The sacral is open as well, and that's the same for all projector types. And the thing about having an open sacral is the energy is fluid. And so sometimes somebody who has an open sacral can do more than they really have the energy for. So it's all about managing your energy and knowing what's enough and how much is enough for you as an individual. And if you want more information about that, you can just check out the projector video, because I talk a lot about the energy of an open sacral. So let's move on to the defined centers. So now we can see that this person has a defined ajna, a defined head, a defined spleen, and also a defined emotional center, as well as a defined root. So if we look at the defined root, I'm going to look at that first because there's 2 gates off it that can sometimes be problematic for people. The first gate on the root is the gate 42, also called the gate of the closer. Now the type of energy that the gate of the closer is all about finishing a project or project management or something that it's already been started. So somebody who has this energy will come in and continue on a project that's already been started. Now, if you don't have either one of these gates defined, really there's no issue with starting or finishing projects, but only when you get one of these gates does an issue start to show up in your life. And that could mean that somebody who has a gate 42 may have issues with starting new projects, starting new things. So you can imagine that if somebody has this energy and they go for a job and the job's all about going around starting new things or opening new stores or some kind of something where you're initiating projects, it wouldn't really balance with the energy of this gate at all. And so It's better for somebody to come in and do project managing or something. So coming in after something's already started. And once you know this about yourself, it just makes things easier because you're not going to kick yourself because you're having a hard time coming up with ideas. And especially with somebody with a defined head and ajna, and it's defined through the 6447. I mean, these are big ideas, big projects, or things that they want to bring into manifestation. And if you also look coming out of the root, you have the gate 54, which is half of the channel of ambition. So this could be a person who has big ideas, big plans, but really has a hard time trying to bring them into form. And the trick with this energy is to wait for right timing, because usually what happens is when you have a big idea and you hold on to it for a while, eventually the timing will become correct and the right person will show up in your life, or something will show up in your life that will give you the energy that you need to start the project and bring your inspired ideas into form. The root center is also what's called a motor. It's the weakest of all motors because it's the furthest away from the throat. But the thing about the root center is it's all about pulse energy. So sometimes the pulse is on and sometimes the pulse is off, and that's okay. So we have to go with the flow of what you feel like you're supposed to do, or what you feel like is the right timing for you at that moment. Because sometimes if the pulse is off and you're trying to get things done, it can be really difficult to do. And because this pulse energy or the root is connected to the emotional center, there can be an emotional pulse. So in other words, what happens is somebody feels very inspired and they really want to do some sort of a project or work or whatever they're doing. And it's usually related to the high part of their emotional wave. And when they come down to the low part of their emotional wave, it can really be a problem for them to start to get things done. So knowing this about themselves is a really good idea, because you're not going to be feeling bad about yourself because you just don't have the mojo or the feeling that you want to do something at certain times. So it's really about knowing your emotional wave, knowing when you're feeling at the right point. And there is some information again on the projector video about emotional waves and how they affect people, so you can check that out if you want. Then again, we have from the root center to the emotional center, we have the 1949, and that's defined as well. 1949 is all about tribal energy. This is all about marriage proposals, marriage bargains, and that kind of stuff. So it's really about relationships, and when you carry this energy, there can be a real comfort in having a relationship. And in fact, it may be more important than it is for other people that there's a solid relationship. And once again, when you think about the pulse going to the root center, when somebody who has this energy is having relationship issues or there's something wrong in that area of their life, there can be issues with the pulse not coming on at the right time. The root center is all about adrenaline energy. So when the pulse is off, this could mean that this person doesn't have any energy, they're sluggish, and really just trying to get anything done in the day is really difficult. It's not exactly the same as a sacral center. A sacral center is like more workforce energy and that kind of stuff. This is adrenaline energy. So it's that pulse to get things done, that initiative to get things done, as opposed to the actual work that is you're doing, the physical work of it. I also talked about the gate 52, and that's coming off the root center as well. And the gate 52 is really about a stillness. That's really what it's all about. It's being very quiet. Now, this is great for meditating and that kind of stuff, but it can also mean a sense of being stubborn or immovable. This is energy that's wonderful for anything where you need to really hold your focus, holding on to ideas. And so when it's used in that way, it's great. But again, it comes in a pulse energy, and that's what's really important to know, that it's not always going to be on. It's going to come on and it's going to come off. And when you have so many gates coming from one particular center, it really shows that there's a lot of focus in that area of your life. If you notice, the 52 is in the line 5. It's in the unconscious earth. What that means is that this is a universal energy, or it's the highest expression. Anything that's in the 5th line is always the highest expression of the energy. So stillness in its highest expression could be a really great meditation teacher, because the 5th energy is all about teaching as well. The 1858 is also defined on the left-hand side, and that's coming from the spleen. And the 18 is considered one of the fear gates. And so what that means, it's the fear of things not always being perfect or not being perfect enough. It's connected to the 58, and what that means is joy in the perfection. So when you have a channel, it can be a little bit easier to deal with than just a hanging gate, because when you just have the 18, that would just be like the fear side of it. But when you have the completion of the channel, then you can actually see the goal is finding the perfection. And this is person who can see a issue with a pattern, or they can, even in music or things like that, they could probably hear the issues if there's any problem with sound quality or something like this. This person can pick out the things that are not within the pattern, because that's all about patterns and things that are not within it. The gate 38 is also defined. So this is a person that can fight for what they feel is worthwhile fighting for. This energy can always be used for the greater good, but it can also be used in a way where you're fighting for pretty much for everything in your life. And that's not necessarily going to be the case, but it can happen. So it's something to keep in mind. They also have the gate 54, and this is a gate of the marrying maiden. And what that means is somebody who can marry into a family or marry somebody who in some way increases their social status. And if they marry somebody or they work with somebody who has the opposite gate, the 32, when you have this complete channel between two people, that generally will mean that somebody will have an energy with somebody else to have an ambition, and they really would work well together on trying to fulfill their dreams as long as they're not too competitive. If we go up to the head and ajna, we have the 6447, which I talked about. The 64 can be considered a connection to the super consciousness, and the person who has this energy can have big downloads. Now, I've not talked about this before, but this person would have a split definition, and what that means is that you have two distinct groupings of defined centers. So if you notice, the head and ajna are defined up top, and then below you have the spleen, the root, and also the emotional center, and they're all connected. So what you have is a complete disconnect from the head and ajna and the other defined centers, and really nothing gets to the throat. So if you're looking at the head and ajna, you have somebody with big ideas and certain beliefs, but nothing gets to the throat, although there are two gates that will have electromagnetics with somebody else. So you have the 17 and also the 23. So anybody with the 43 or the 62, or if you have transits, there can be that time when you can actually start to speak about all the ideas and thoughts in your head. And then we have the emotional center that's not connected to the throat. But if somebody comes in with a 35, or you have a transit that is going to put a planet in the gate 35, then there could be potential to talk about the feelings. Because what's happening is when you don't have any connection to the throat with all these defined centers, you have this disconnect. So somebody who carries this energy is having big emotional waves and big emotional feelings, but yet they're not able to talk about it unless they have somebody who can talk about it with them, or in other words, bridge the gap. So ultimately, this can be a lot of feeling a lot of things inside, but not being able to articulate them. But the good thing about electromagnetics is we're always looking for the gate that completes our gate, so that we'll have a complete channel. And really, all this person needs is a gate 35. And if they get the gate 35, they're going to get a defined throat. They're going to get a motorized throat. They're going to be able to talk about their feelings, the projects that they want to do in their life, and also they can talk about their health. So it's nice that there's only one gate that will bridge all those gaps. As far as the head and ajna go, to be able to talk about that, they need the 62 or also the 43. But you also have to remember, anything that comes from the head and ajna is always what they call projected energy. And projected energy is always energy that needs to be called out, or somebody needs to ask for your opinion before it's given, for it to be taken in the very best possible way. And since I just talked about the gate 17, I'm going to talk about that now, because that's in the Incarnation cross. So let's move on to that part. So now if we look at the Incarnation cross, so we see that this person has a right angle cross of service. And the right angle cross of service is 17 in the conscious sun, 18 in the conscious earth, 58 in the unconscious sun, and 52 in the unconscious earth. And as we always say, on the unconscious side is something that we're not as aware of after the age of 40, but this person's over the age of 40, so they're probably more aware of this part of their personality. And I know that when I say personality, I probably am confusing people, because the right-hand side or the conscious side is a personality, but I'm just using it in a different way, as we would talk about somebody's personality as opposed to the human design meaning of personality. So if we look at the conscious sun, we see the gate 17. The gate 17 is all about the gate of opinions. And then just below that, we have the gate 18. And the gate 18 is all about correction, or trying to find a perfect pattern. And if you look at the unconscious sun, we have the gate 58. That's all about finding the joy in the perfection. So finding joy in getting everything perfectly right. And then just below that is a stillness, and that's the 52, which we talked about as well. So if we look at this energy, we can see somebody who is here to find the joy in the correcting of the patterns, and how they do that is to do it with concentration, or in other words, holding on to an idea, and that would be related to the gate 52. And based on what they've critiqued or the corrections that they see that need to happen, they can give their opinion. And you can imagine that this energy is the gate of opinions, and when it's given in a timing when somebody is actually not looking for it, it can be taken as criticism instead of actually trying to help. And usually people who have this energy are actually just trying to help, but there's always going to be potential that somebody who is giving this correction advice or something like that, and again, if it's not being called out of them or asked for it, then this person can be considered somebody who's a know-it-all or always trying to boss people around. So really, for this energy to work the best, especially when it's in your incarnation cross, because it's really high up there and it means it's an important part of your chart, it's really important to really wait for the right timing and really wait for people to ask your advice. And when you do, you're going to find that you're going to have a receptive person who's going to listen to what you have to say. And when somebody listens to what you have to say, especially when you're a projector, because ultimately you're here to guide and direct people, it's just going to make life much easier for you. Everybody's going to get the information they need because you have a lot of information, because you've been experimenting for a lot of your life. And so it's really an amazing thing that can happen when all the energy and all the timing is right, and the magic can happen because you get to do exactly what you're meant to do. And if we look just below at the moon is really where we're going to use this incarnation cross when we're out in the world. And if you look at the unconscious moon, that's the 39, and the conscious moon is the 47. We've already talked about the 39 and how it's all about provoking people into the abundance of spirit, to know that it's a provocation that is all about provoking the 55, and the 55 is all about knowing that there is something bigger than us. Call it God, the universe, whatever you want. And they may have a plan for you that you don't know about at all, and sometimes surrendering to what is and allowing what's supposed to be to come into your life is the best thing you can do. And because this person has a 55 in their Saturn, this is a huge lesson for them to really surrender and just let life flow the way it's supposed to, rather than trying to control all the time. Because you also have a person who has a gate 21, and that gate 21 is in their Jupiter, and that says that their reward is to have the idea of knowing when to control, when to let go, and when to hold on. And then if we look at the gate 47 in the conscious moon, we have the gate 47, which is all about mindset. And really somebody who has this energy in a pretty prominent part of their chart, and the moon would be considered a prominent part of the chart, this whole idea of positive thinking really does play a big part in this person's life. Because when somebody who has the energy of the 47, and this may not necessarily be true for everyone because everybody's set up differently, but for somebody with the 47, like I said, in a pretty prominent part, it's really important to really try and see the brighter side of life as much as possible. Of course, we're always going to get into a funk every once in a while. That's just part of life. But really, this person, in order to get the best things out of life, they need to try and pull it out and come back to the other side where they can start to see things in a brighter way. And when they do, it does make a magical difference in their life, and that things will start to move forward like they want them to. So for now, that's what I'm going to say about this chart. Of course, I could go into a lot more detail because there's a lot more to talk about, but it's really just a taste or a sample of what you can see in a human design chart. And I didn't mention it in the beginning, but I always want to let people know that whatever I say is not written in stone. If you don't believe in anything I've said, if it doesn't resonate with you, then please just go with your own intuition, go with what feels right with you, because I'm not an authority, or is anybody else an authority on other people's lives. We're all individuals, and we act and do exactly what we do. And it's all related to how we were brought up, and who our parents were and who our parents weren't, and who our friends were, and who we married and who we didn't marry, and all the people that have come into our lives, and all the energy that we've come in contact with, the experiences we've had, the places we've lived, the schools we've gone to, the way we've lived our lives. And so this is ultimately all about you deciding what's right for you. And so, having said that, let's move on to the next chart. So this person was born June 8th, 1990. And just like the last person I did, this person is a projector type. And I've already talked about projector types, so I'm not going to talk about that again. And this person has the profile 1-3. The 1-3 profile is called somebody who's an investigating martyr or an investigating experimenter. I've already made a video all about the 1-3 profile, but I will briefly say that the 1 is all about a data-driven energy, somebody who likes to find all the information out, and the 3 energy is all about experimenting. So The conscious part is the 1 energy and the unconscious part is the 3 energy. So the 1 energy is all about finding out the information, and when they have a foundation built with the information, then they go on to the 3 part, which is all about experimenting. This profile is also called a right angle profile, and it's an interpersonal profile, and I've already talked about what that means. Anybody with a 1-3 profile is a great person to have around because they have all kinds of information, and they also have the experiments to back up the information and the results of the experiment. So the older these people get, the more they know, and the wealth of information that they can give is pretty astronomical because they have such a need for getting data and information. So that would mean they probably tried a lot of things in their life. So I'm going to start with this defined centers first, and we can see that this person has a defined ajna and a defined head, a defined throat, and also a defined identity. Now the difference here between this and the previous chart is that this person is what's called a no motors projector, somebody who has no motors in their body graph. As before, the person before had a defined solar plexus, which is a motor, and they also had a defined root. This person has neither. So energy may be an issue for somebody who has no motors. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So if we look at this person with a defined head and ajna, which is kind of cool because really only 30% of the population have a defined head, and it's just not as common. So we have 2 people, one after the other, with the defined head and ajna. So that's kind of interesting in itself. This person has a lot more gates there. We'll talk about those in a minute. And when I talked about the defined throat before, this person is a projector and they have a defined throat. So you can see the difference. Now their definition is through their identity center. And since the identity center isn't a motor, then that would make this person not have a motorized throat. And that's why they'd be considered a projector. Now, if they had a motor to the throat, then of course they would be a manifestor because a manifestor has a motor to the throat and they have an undefined sacral area. When we talk about any of the defined centers, we're always talking about an energy that's more fixed in how it expresses itself. So basically you have like your own little supply of this energy and you don't need energy from other people. And so somebody who has a defined identity could be someone who is more fixed in who they are and know about who they are more. Now that's also based on what else is in the chart, because there might be other places in the chart where you don't feel as confident about who you are. So you can't always base it on one particular center if you're going to feel secure in who you are or not. We also have a defined throat, and that just means that there's more fixed way of how they speak. Also defined ajna, which is all about having fixed belief and being able to hold on to a fixed belief, and that could be religion, or it can also be something that you have a strong belief about. So then we see that this person also has a defined head, and when somebody has a defined head, they're more of an inspiration as opposed to be inspired by others. These are the people that give inspiration to all the open heads around. So when we're walking around, somebody who has a defined head can come around and just walk by you and suddenly you have an inspiration. And the theory is that somebody with a defined head can have their mind read by somebody with an open head. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure, but it's a theory. So if we look at this person's head gates, we see that they have the 61 and also the 63, but they also have the 47. So really there's a lot of activation in the head. So this person could really have a lot of information coming into their head center. Anybody with a lot of definition in the head gates can be somebody who has a lot of dreams, and some of these dreams can actually even be prophetic, or they can prophesize the future. Now this is not necessarily always the case, but there is a potential for this. Somebody who has the 61 defined like this person does could be somebody who's deeply interested in the occult, or basically things that can't be proven or things that we don't really know the answers to. When you have the 63 defined as well, this person can also have an interest in the occult, have an interest in the mystery, but also have this doubt about exactly if it's really true or not, or if it's just something that is just make-believe. So there'd be a push and pull. So it's good because there can be a balance between finding out the information. This person wouldn't get too light and airy about what's happening in the mystical world. They would really want to have some real hard evidence to back up the idea that something is out there more than we can see. Having the complete 6124 channel is good too, because whenever we have a full channel, there is potential for it to be expressed in a higher way than it is if we just have half a channel or half a gate. When we have a lot of head gates or a lot of energy in the head area, this can be somebody who's got a lot of mind chatter and they can get lost in their thoughts. The energy of the channel 6124 is the question why. And then if you look at the energy of the 63, it's prove something to me. So that's the push and pull that I just talked about. So like I said, they have a defined head and ajna, and if you notice, this person has a split definition too. So the head and ajna are separate from the throat and defined G center or identity center. You have a defined head and ajna and there's no connection to the throat. It can be a lot of things in your head and you just can't seem to express them or to bring them into form. Again, everything that needs to go into the throat center and have a motor for it to come into manifestation. So without the connection to get the energy down into the next part, into the throat, then there could be issues again with just not really being able to express all your thoughts and ideas and your big downloads. We see that the throat center is connected to the identity center. I've talked about this before. This can be somebody who's extremely sensitive to criticism, because when you have the throat connected to the identity center, this is the indication that somebody who speaks from their soul, because the G center is considered the seat of the soul. So when somebody who speaks from their soul is criticized, you can imagine that it's not going to feel good. So this can be deeply hurtful to somebody to be criticized, and because of that, if they are criticized after they've spoken about something, they very well may stop talking, or they sometimes call this the turtle syndrome, where they literally pull back into their shell and they won't come out for a while. We see that this person also has the energy of the 1/8. Instead of just half a gate, they have the whole channel of the creative role model. So this is a person who wants to make a big impact on the world too, and it's all about a creative contribution to the world. Whenever you carry this energy, there's a need for acceptance for who you are, because this is considered individual energy, like I mentioned before. Since there's no motor involved, this is projected energy, and timing is critical to have the energy and the ideas expressed in the best way possible. And when the timing's right, the energy of the 1/8 can empower people as well as motivate them, and the people that are listening to somebody who's talking with this energy will know that this person has some value in what they have to say. And if the timing isn't right, there might be a lackluster response and people may not really understand what this person's trying to talk about. So again, timing is hugely important for this energy. This person also has the energy of the 1333, and that is a complete channel as well, and that's called the channel of the prodigal. When you carry this energy, people know that you're a good listener, or they perceive you as a good listener. So you not only listen to the stories, but you also can, a lot of times you'll write down the stories, or you can be somebody who's really interested in history, because it's really talking about learning the stories of the past so that we can bring the information into the present. And through listening and experiencing the stories of others, there's a real ability to give directions to people and to see them for who they truly are. And this can be a really great leadership energy as well, keeping in mind that this is projected energy because there's no motor as well. And also it is a connection between the identity center and the throat center, which is always going to be a very, very sensitive energy to criticism. So there's a lot to offer from this area, but timing is crucial. And when the timing's right, this person can have the fullest expression of this energy so that they can help people and help them with directions in their lives. Looking at the open centers, we have an open will, an open solar plexus, an open sacral, and that's always going to be the case with a projector type. Also an open root and an open spleen. The open spleen is completely open, so there's absolutely no fear gates on the spleen, which is kind of nice. And the theory is that anybody who has an open spleen without any of the fear gates is fearless. But that's not necessarily fearless in everything. It's generally just talking about the gates of the spleen that are considered the fear gates and all the themes that go with each of the fear gates. Somebody with an open spleen can be somebody who holds on to things a lot. They'll hold on to the past or hold on to things that have happened to them. This can also happen with the energy of the 3313, so it's something to think about. Somebody with an open spleen can be naturally a medical intuitive because they completely feel the energy of other people concerning their health. And also, since the spleen is considered an area of intuition, somebody who has a completely open spleen without any gates could be somebody who may not feel very intuitive at all, because their intuition comes in all different ways. Usually when you have gates going into the spleen, your intuition can be representative of the actual gates that are going in, because each gate has a different type of intuition. So you have some that you can smell, your intuition is all about smelling things, others that are about a clear knowing, and others are about a clairvoyance or a clear seeing. So this person can have potentially any of those ways of intuiting information. The This person has an undefined will, and the will gates are the 26 and also the 40. The 40 we already learned about is a gate of being alone. The 26 is all about sales energy and really closing the deal on sales. And this energy is quite important for this person because they have it also in their moon as well as their conscious earth. The trick with this type of energy, it is tribal energy, and the trick is that whenever you're selling something or you're trying to sell yourself, even, the best way to handle it is to sell something that you know is a good product for everyone involved, because you can have a potential with this energy to sell people things that are not necessarily the best things for them. So ideally, in order for it to work best for everyone involved and really to reap the most you can from this energy, it's to sell something that is mutually beneficial to you as well as other people. This person also has an emotional center that's open, and the only gate coming off that is the gate 22. So all the energy is filtered through the gate 22, which is all about grace. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the Incarnation cross. And I've said this before, but I'm just going to quickly just repeat it, that when someone has an open emotional center, this is a person who's not meant to wait to buy something, or to, in the case of a projector, to accept an invitation. If the invitation feels good in that moment, then that is the time for this person to say yes to it. Now, usually somebody with an open emotional center will want to wait and weigh out the pros and cons, but when this happens, this person could lose the opportunity because they're open. Somebody with a defined emotional center really needs to have their emotional wave to pass, or they have the highs and lows of an emotional wave to make a decision. So somebody with an open emotional center usually likes to wait, and somebody with a defined emotional center usually likes to go right away. So it's kind of counterintuitive to what you really want to do, but if you do it that way, you'll probably have more luck. And usually somebody with an open emotional center can think of quite a few times in their life when they've missed out on opportunities because they've waited too long. And this person also has an open root, and that's all about the energy of adrenaline energy. This could be somebody who is always wanting to get their projects done right away, or their work energy, or whatever they need to do. They want to get their projects done right away as soon as they get it. Or the other way is that they have to wait till the last minute and all that adrenaline builds up, and then they get that burst of energy to get their jobs done. This can be somebody who likes caffeine or sugar or things like that, something to give them that little bit of a boost of adrenaline. Now, that's not always the case, but there is potential for that. So if we look at this person's Incarnation cross, we have the 45 in the conscious sun, the 26 in the conscious earth, the 22 in the unconscious sun, and also the 47 in the unconscious earth. And this is the right angle cross of rulership. So if there's anything I can really say about this chart, this is a person who has a lot of leadership energy in their body graph. And so being a projector, that leadership energy can really be of benefit to other people. But again, it's got to be something that people are asking from them or recognizing in them. They have to be recognized for being a leader. And then when they are, then they can really do a lot of good work and really help a lot of people. This is a person who could be a counselor. This is a person who could creatively inspire people. And then you also add in the Incarnation cross, and this is all about queenly or king energy, because it's all in the conscious sun. So if we can imagine that the whole body graph, all the energy is filtered through the conscious sun and who we are as a personality, then this is all about that king energy or the queen energy based on who you are. And that's all about being a ruler. So that's why it's called the cross of rulership. And this rulership can be in the highest expression or not. There's potential to be graceful and sell ideas in a regal way. And this is influential energy, and it can be influential energy in the highest expression or maybe not so high. Because there's always going to be that potential for somebody who has a gate 26 to lie. That doesn't mean that it has to happen, because there's really, sometimes with a gate 26, there's this over sense of integrity, or there can be someone who likes to have a little bit of bending of the rules or seeing truth in their perspective rather than maybe not exactly the truth that is clear to everybody else. But there's always going to be a middle place, and really that's what we as individuals choose for our own paths and how we're going to operate in the world. And because we have the 47 in this Incarnation cross, we have somebody who can teach about mindset. And when they're teaching mindset in a graceful way. And when we look at the energy of the moon, we have the conscious moon in the 26th, and we have the unconscious moon in the gate 40. So this person can really be teaching about that sales energy, about the importance of integrity and the importance of selling the right ideas for the good of all. And one more thing that I didn't mention about the open will center, because this person has an open will center as well, is that somebody who has an open will center really shouldn't try and make too many promises or commitments, because when they do, and if they can't come through with it, then there can be a lot of issues with guilt and not feeling like they came through on their commitment. Because somebody who has willpower can will themselves to do whatever they need to do, but when someone doesn't have willpower, so you might make a lot of commitments and decide to do a lot of things, and it just eventually may not work out for you. And because of this, a person can have, as I mentioned, the digestive issues, even ulcers. I also talked about the fact that this person is a no motors projector. And so for somebody who's a no motors projector, it's really hard to get the energy, or can be potentially hard to get the energy to do what they need to do. So for this reason, it's good for somebody with no motors to actually get out in the world and to not necessarily socialize. If they're not into socializing, that's completely fine, but at least get out into the world and be around other energetics of people, and gather some energy so that they can get the energy to do what they need to do, and to know that the energy is something that is fluid and it comes and it goes, and to understand that maybe they have a lot of energy when they go out, but that energy isn't going to be there indefinitely. And when they learn to work with their energy and how they gain energy and how it feels for them, it really can help them so that they can get all the tasks done that they need to do, or whatever they need to do in their life. Now, I mentioned about the gate 40, and the interesting thing about the gate 40, and this is related to Karen Curry Parker, she's talked about this, but what I've also noticed is I've noticed a gate 40 in a lot of charts of people who are making changes. And it makes sense, because what Karen Curry Parker said is that people who have the 40 also can have a lot of what's called individual energy or mutative energy. So here to bring changes in the world. And the 40 energy is like, it's a tribal energy. So it's bringing in the tribe or gathering the tribe. And it's all about making deals and bargains and that kind of stuff. I mean, there's many dimensions to every gate in the whole body graph. So you can always look at a different perspective of what the gate 40 is all about. But this is a gate 40 in the 5th line, which means it's the highest expression of the gate 40. Because this person has so much individual energy, there is probably a good chance that they're here to bring mutative ideas or unusual ideas that haven't been heard about before, to bring it to the tribe, because there's a balance of tribal energy and individual energy. And that can be a hard energy to carry, because on one hand, there's a sense of the tribal energy, and that's all about family and doing what's right for your family and being in group gatherings and hanging out with people and the tribe can be any kind of people. I mean, basically people that you relate to. And then when you have this individual energy, there's a push-pull, because the individual doesn't really need to have those tribal setups. They can go out and do their own thing. They can bring out these changes. They can be on their own. They can break the rules of what's normal for the tribe. And so there could be a push and pull with this energy. So how this is balanced is just to feel into it and feel what's right for you as an individual, because ultimately there's a lot of energy here to really sell some new and mutative ideas. And because the right angle cross of rulership can also be a teaching gate or teaching cross, then this person could teach the mutative ideas and unusual ways of being, things that haven't been done before. And because this person has so much sensitivity in their chart to criticism, it would be really important to really try and work with right timing, so that when they do express their energy and the inventive ideas and innovative ideas, that they're received exactly the way they want it to be. So now let's look at a few more interesting parts of the chart. So if we're looking at the Saturn, and that's our biggest lesson, and then the Jupiter is our biggest reward, we can see that this person has the Saturn, and it's exactly the same. It's 61 in the 3rd line and also 61 in the 4th line. The theory is that the more times a gate is featured in your chart, the more of a theme that is in your life. Now, something that I've built on that is my theory, but maybe not necessarily everybody else's perspective. When we have a gate featured more than once in our chart, I feel like there's a progression between the lower line of the gate and the upper line. So what that means is that, for instance, this person has a 61 in line 3 and they also have a 61 in line 4. So from that perspective, I would say this person will experiment with occult knowledge and the why of the things that makes them wonder about the world and the mystical world and things that we can't really explain in this world. And then they will go on to the foundational part of it, which is the 61 line 4. So they'll find the foundation in the occult knowledge, or the foundation in that innovative mystical practice. So there's a progression through their life where they go from 1 to 2 to, and sometimes people will have up to even 5 or 6, or it's shocking at some charts that you can look at. And I've seen this before, that somebody will have the same gate repeated at least, I've seen it at least 5 or 6 times before in the same chart, and each line is represented. So really that's a theme that that person is going through and having to go through each line to figure out exactly how they can get to the expression that they need for their particular body graph. And one more thing about the gate 61 that's interesting. Some people say that if you have this gate in your body graph, that you can have an ability to see the spirit world. And when the gate's in the planet Saturn, then that would be really learning your lessons through experimenting and building a foundation with occult knowledge and the whys of life in general. So then if we look at it being in the Saturn, I mean, Saturn's all about doing the hard work and kind of in a way it's all about being practical, because there's a lot of connection with Saturn and the material world. So when you think about it, 61 being in the Saturn, you think, well, it's about somebody who's getting lost in their thoughts possibly, and really not doing much other than contemplating and thinking, and not really doing anything with what they learn. There's a potential for that. And because there's no connection between the ajna and the throat, and there's no connection with a motor in a throat, this could be sort of energy that really just gets lost in their thoughts and just not really getting ahead in life, because there's just too much thought about something. And then if you also have the 63 in there, well, ultimately what's happening is you're also having yourself doubting everything you've discovered. So you could think about hours for a concept, only to come up with a doubt and suspicion about exactly what you thought about, and really it was just a waste of your energy and time. So what happens with somebody with a 61, especially if it's in Saturn, is just to shake it off sometimes, get out into the world, and really just kind of get out of their head. And with a lot of aloneness featured in their chart, because the 13 like to be alone, and also the 40 like to be alone, there's a need to just shake it off and get out. And probably because the third line is there too, this person's probably out there experimenting, so maybe this Saturn is not as much of an issue for them. So then if we move into the Jupiter, we see that the Jupiter's in the 15 and also in the 39. Well, 39 is all about provocation, provoking people. So when you have it in Jupiter, that's your gift. So you're provoking people, and the provocation is in the 6th line. So this is the role model status. So it's basically somebody who's going to go through 3 phases of provoking people into possibly being open to mutative ideas. Now, if the contemplation and all the head energy and inspirational thoughts was just on its own and there was no provocation, then you would think that this person wouldn't need to go out there and sort of tell people what they've found out. And going back to the 3rd line again, sharing what they know and what they've learned from their experiments. And then if we look at the other side, the design Jupiter, we see that's in the 15. And the 15 can be about extremes in behavior or extremes in routines. This could be somebody who always wants to have a routine but really struggles to try and make a routine because they're not meant to have a routine. A routine is something that the 5 energy really likes, but the 15 is like wide routines. And the trick with this kind of energy is to not really worry so much about a routine, and just kind of look at your life and say, okay, if I want to exercise today, it doesn't always have to be at this particular time. Especially with a person who has an open root as well, there could be this whole idea that it has to be done right away, as opposed to actually saying, I'm going to exercise whenever I have a free moment, so it'll be done for that day. So that can be for any routines in the life. So otherwise, the 15 is always trying to find a routine, and it becomes frustrating, and so they'll do something for a while and then they'll just toss it out the window. But if there's an idea that there is no time frame and that they have the freedom to do it whenever it feels right to them or at any point in the day, then that usually does help with that energy. But the other idea of the 15 energy is all about the love of humanity, or it's all about a humanitarian kind of concept. So if you look at this chart as a whole, you look at somebody who is contemplating mutative ideas about humanity. They're teaching mutative ideas. They're teaching about mindset. And to this point, Rhonda Byrne, who was the author of the book The Secret, in fact has the gate 47 in her Jupiter. So this is a really powerful gate, and just to show you how it can really manifest in somebody's life, I think you can't really make this stuff up. It's pretty incredible how the synchronicity of the body graph and how it can feature in our life is unexplainable but extremely powerful. And I know I've already said this before, but especially when somebody has the gate 47 in their earth or in an area where it's an important part of their chart, it's really, really important to try and do as much as they can to work with their mindset and work with trying to see the positive in most situations. And having said that, that doesn't mean it's easy, but it certainly will help a person in their life when they carry this gate. The one thing that might be helpful for this person is having the gate 24, which usually in its own way, it will put a positive spin on a lot of things in life. So that might really help this person with their mindset. And that's probably all I have for this chart. And let's move on to the last chart and see what we can find out about it. So the last chart is somebody who was born on June 4th, 1970. The first thing we can see here is this person is a manifesting generator. So we've had two projectors and now we have a manifesting generator. And we know this person is a generator type, number one, because they have a red square at the bottom sacral area. They also have a brown square in the throat area, which means it's defined. But the reason why we know this person is a manifesting generator is because there's a direct connection between the solar plexus and the throat. And that's through the channel 3536. I have two videos on the manifesting generator type, so if you want to check those out, you certainly can. And the thing about a manifesting generator is, with all generator types, is basically to visualize something that they want in their life. So for instance, if they want to take a new course or something like that, and then some information comes in about a course that they're offering that lines up with what they're thinking, then they can respond or not to that information that they've received. So they're not a manifester. They can initiate, but sometimes a manifesting generator, because they have a motor to the throat, they may feel like they can initiate. And when that happens, generally they don't get the results they expect to. So it's really important to always respond to something outside of yourself when you're a manifesting generator. And if you do that, then life gets easier for you. And just like a manifester, a manifesting generator type doesn't need anybody. They have all the energy they need already. They have a motor to the throat already, but that doesn't mean they don't want to have people in their lives. So ultimately, it's about their choice to have people in their lives. So just because we say that somebody doesn't need other people, that doesn't mean that they don't want to have other people in their life. And of course, there's always going to be a lot more to a chart based on what's in the chart. And the type is one part of it, but it's certainly not the whole part of it. So if we look at this chart, we see this person has quite a bit of definition in their chart. So we have somebody who's got a defined throat, defined identity, defined will center, a defined solar plexus, as well as a defined spleen. And if we look at the defined throat, the theory behind the defined throat, or any throat, is whenever you have a gate coming off the throat, that's usually what you talk about. So this person has a gate 23, the gate 35, and also the gate 45. The gate 23 is an interesting gate, and when it's a hanging gate, it can be a frustrating gate. And the reason why that is because this is the voice of mutative ideas. And the problem with this gate is that because it's not attached to the gate 43, or there's not a complete channel, there can be a difficulty in expressing those ideas that this person has that are mutative. Mutative always means something that's new and something that hasn't been thought of before. This is an innovative and forward thinking that really can make huge changes in the world. But the only way this person can make huge changes in the world with this energy is to have the electromagnetic that connects to it, and that would be the gate 43. Now that can happen with planetary transits, or it can also happen with people. And the theory is that electromagnetics, we're always looking for the match to our gates. And so this person would probably be attracted to, or people would be attracted to, this person's energy because of the gate 23. And it's featured in the planet Mercury, so that means that it's something that this person would probably like to talk about, but there's this disconnect. So ultimately, there could be some frustration with this energy, this whole idea that you have something on the tip of your tongue that it's hard to bring into form, the ideas that you have that are rumbling around in your head. And it probably is even only heightened more because there's also 2 head gates that are hanging gates. So you have the gate 64 and also the gate 63. So there's probably a lot of frustration with all the ideas and the mind chatter that is always going through this person's head, but they just can't seem to really get it out. But when the timing is right and the energy that matches it and it's called out of them, it will be the time for this energy to be released. And in the background, there's also the gate 63. And the 63 is in their unconscious sun. So what's happening here is this person may be doubting quite a bit of what they think and the mind chatter that goes through their mind and the things that they think and the innovative ideas that they think about. There's a lot of doubt because of that gate. There could be self-doubt. There could be not really understanding if it's real or if it's just an illusion. And because of this, this person could be not really moving forward in their life. And the thing to remember with the gate 63 is doubt is important in life. It really is. If we didn't have doubt, every invention would go through and many people could be killed because of it. Because we question new inventions and we question things that are coming into the world that are innovative and unusual, it's definitely important information and it's important energy. This energy is something that can save lives, but it can also really stymie somebody or stop them from actually progressing because it just makes them really doubt way too much in their life. And sometimes you just have to just allow that doubt to wash over you, to understand that it's there and that it's part of who you are, but it doesn't mean it's true. And just because you think it's true doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And just play with that energy and see what works and what doesn't work and what is really wrong and something that you need to question and what is really something that you didn't really need to question, but you did anyways, just because it happened to be something that was rattling around in your mind. This person also has a gate 45 coming off their throat, and the gate 45 is deferred leadership or leadership that's given to somebody based on just their energy. It really tells people around you that you're capable of leading and that you can lead. And it's low expression. This energy can be somebody who is considered to feel really self-important and that they need to be treated in a special way wherever they go. This could be somebody who has a diva energy, either male or female. It doesn't really make a difference. This is tribal energy, and in its highest expression, it is here to rule the subjects or lead the subjects, or in regular terms, it's really an energy that is telling people the direction of where they can go in their life, and it's helping to corral the energy of a lot of people into one direction so that everybody's working together as a team. This is not a democratic energy and is all about rulership or ruling the people and giving everybody the direction that they need to go. Another thing with this energy is that when it is a hanging gate like it is here, there's potential to have the electromagnetic for the gate 21. This complete channel that comes together with 2 people can be a little bit difficult in relationships because there is a real push-pull. Because the gate 21 is all about control and the gate 45 is all about regal energy. And basically the king or queen doesn't want to be controlled by the person who carries the gate 21. The gate 21 is also called the treasurer. So the treasurer's job is important just as much as the queen or king's job is important. The queen or king is, of course, the person that's going to give out all the food and supplies and everything to their people. And the gate 21 would be the treasurer, who's making sure there is enough food and supplies for all the people to go through the winter. In regular terms, you could have somebody who loves to spend a lot of money to get really elaborate and beautiful things, and they may not necessarily have the money to buy the things that they want to. So if that's the case, then the person who's carrying the gate 21 energy could be telling the person to stop spending, to cut back on what they're buying, or things like that. There could be a push and pull. And if you can see that between the 45 and the 21, that defines the will center. This person already has a defined will center, but if it was just defining the will center, there's going to be a real big willed struggle between the 2 energies of the 2 people that would potentially come together to make the completed channel. Because this person also has the 14-2, which is the energy of luck and resources, as well as the opposite gate that talks about being able to manage the resources, the impression I would get would be that this person wouldn't really have issues with dealing with money. But some people who just have the gate 45 without any mitigating energies could have issues with financial management. This can also happen if somebody just has a gate 14 without the matching gate 2. And the other energy that comes off the throat is the gate 35. This is the gate of the jack of all trades. Having the completed channel means that it brings a motor to the throat, which I have already said. And the other thing about this whole channel is that this is somebody who may potentially really be always looking for a new thrill or a new idea or something different and innovative. And it can even manifest itself in a way that this person may feel comfortable in chaotic energy. Having the completed channel of the 3536 means that this could be somebody who moved around a lot or really wanted to move, even if they hadn't had the opportunity. It's all about seeing new things and experiencing different things in their life, and that's really an important part of it. It's called an experiential emotional wave. So when somebody who has this energy, it's not a high, high, low, low energy, but it is an energy that can come in waves, and usually it's an energy that slowly builds up. So the emotional wave slowly builds up and it gets to its highest point, and then it's a very rapid drops. So that means that this person could have a sudden drop in their mood, and there could be no trigger for it. It just basically is related to their wave. And just knowing that this is part of how their wave works is really kind of important, so that they can understand that just because they're low or they're not feeling their best on that day, it's nothing wrong with them. And really what this energy is talking about, an all emotional energy, is that when we have the blue times, if we have emotional waves, it's just part of the whole wave. It's part of normal behavior. And the more you question something, the more it becomes like it's something wrong with you, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with emotions. It's funny because nobody really ever questions when they're feeling happy or why somebody's feeling happy, but as soon as somebody's feeling blue or unhappy, then everybody questions them. But knowing that this is part of a cycle that goes up and down, and seeing that this is just part of it, really makes it easier for somebody to understand how they operate and know that this too shall pass. If we look at the spleen, it's defined, and we see that there's actually 3 fear gates coming off the spleen. And the fear gates are the gate 50, the gate 28, and the gate 18. The gate 18 is always about things not being perfect enough, and the gate 28 is struggling in life. And so somebody who carries this energy in a prominent part of their chart is somebody who will struggle with things in life more than the average person. And sometimes the struggle that this person has is based on their own actions and less about life, because it's almost like somebody who carries a gate 28 can be drawn to the most difficult way to do things. And if I use an example for my own self, who I have the gate 28, for instance, when I learned astrology, I went out and got the most advanced astrology book known to man, and that's the first book I ever learned about astrology from. So if I had have gone out and got something that was more basic, that talked all the basic concepts, of course it would have been easier. It's because it's the foundation and you build on it, but that's not the way the gate 28 operates. Usually they want to go out and get the hardest thing to do. And because of this, the energy of the 28 can really put obstacles in our path, but most times the obstacles are there for us to understand really what's worth struggling for and what's not worth struggling for. That's the whole energy of the 28 and what it's meant to do in our lives. And if you see that this person has a gate 28 in their Jupiter, that means that's the reward, learning what's worth struggling for in life and what's not worth struggling for. This can be a stubborn energy as well. And this can be in the energy of somebody who, as soon as someone tells them they can't do something, they're 100% going to prove that person to be wrong. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I go through the Saturn gates. And if you also see that they have the gate 50, the gate 50 is all about feeling that your actions are going to in some way let somebody who you love down. It's tribal energy, and in its low expression, it can have somebody taking care of people or taking care of things that are really not their responsibility. This can be a parent who is parenting a child who is long beyond the stage where they can be taking care of themselves and just always doing stuff for people, even though this person could probably be capable of doing their own things. And the theory about all the fear gates is that the only way to release the fear of the fear gates is to push through that energy, knowing that once you push through it and you get to the other side and you see that all the catastrophes and the horrible things you thought that were going to happen don't actually happen. And when you do that and you do it a few times, generally the energy and the fear of this gate will start to become something that's not as important in your life, because really the fear gates in someone's life and body graph can really have a lot of control in their life, to the point where they actually can keep somebody away from their life purpose because they're so locked in the fear and what that could potentially mean for their life. And if we look at this person also has a defined sacral, and all generator types have that. We have the defined gate 34, and the gate 34 is all about power. There's also the channel 515 and also the channel 14.2. I mentioned about the channel 14.2, and the channel 15.5 or 515 is all about an energy of the rhythm of life. This can be somebody who really connects with nature, and if they don't connect with nature, they should get out in nature because it's a way for them to get the energy that they need. There is a deep-seated need to be out in nature with this kind of energy. And if we can see in this chart, this is a person who also has a split definition. So all three charts that I did today all have a split definition. So if you look here, you can see that the emotional center, the throat, and also the will center are all connected together, but there's no connection to the identity, the sacral, and also the spleen. So what that says about this person is that there's potential that they can talk about their emotions and really talk about themselves, but when it comes to talking about their work, their health, or really their soul energy or their innermost desires, they may have difficulty talking about that because there is no connection to the throat. And if they wanted to get the connection to the throat for all these centers, all they would need is literally one gate, and that would be the gate 59, and that would bring everything to the throat so they could talk about everything. So if we look at the open centers, we see that this person has an open head, an open ajna, and also an open root. So the open head and also the open root are considered two pressure centers. So there's a lot of pressure to get things done with the open root. And then the open head is all about being inspired all the time, no matter where you go. When you also have the gate 64 and 63, I mentioned those before, but when you have two hanging gates like that and an open head, it can be really all about a lot of mind chatter and getting lost in your head. The 64 is all about big downloads, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the Incarnation Cross. And so then we'll move down to the open root. And if we look at the open root, we can see that this person has the gate 53. Now the gate 53 is one half of the gate that we talked about, the 42 with the other subscriber. And so the gate 53 is a matching gate. So this is the energy of somebody who initiates things but doesn't necessarily keep working with them. This can be a problem for a lot of people who carry this energy because they may feel like they don't have the energy to complete tasks. And because of this, a lot of times people will beat themselves up and say that they're quitters. This isn't about quitting energy. It's about something that they're really good at initiating things. And really that's one of the gifts that they have in their body graph. And so knowing that, having somebody else come in and energetically bring the energy of the closer, or somebody else come in and start to be a project manager for something that the project has been begun. So it doesn't mean that somebody who has this energy can't finish projects. It just means that the energy has to be right for them to finish projects. Knowing that this is a part of who you are is really important, because usually people who carry this energy will feel that this is a part of their life where they've had a lot of problems getting the mojo to continue on with something they've already started. So if we look at this person's profile, we see that they're 3-5. I have a whole video on the 3-5 profile, so if you want to check that out, you can do that. Basically, the 3-5 is called the martyr heretic, or also called the experimenter. And the fifth line is also called the teacher. So this is the energy of somebody who experiments with things in their lives. And once they figure out what works and what doesn't work, they can share that information or universalize the information that they've learned. And what they've learned is usually going to be something that is related to their incarnation cross and also to their moon. The path of the 3-5 energy can be a little bit difficult sometimes because a lot of times they're pulled into the projection field with a fifth line energy, and people expect things from them that necessarily is not true about them. So again, it's just about continuing to experiment and sharing when they have the opportunity to share. And when they do this, then they'll have the fullest expression of their profile. So if we look at the Incarnation Cross, we see that this is the Incarnation Cross, the right angle cross of consciousness. And the gates for this cross are the gate 35 in the conscious sun, the gate 5 in the conscious earth, 63 in the unconscious sun, and 64 in the unconscious earth. Somebody else who carries this Incarnation Cross is the televangelist Joel Osteen. And if we look at the gate 35 and the conscious sun is the gate where all the information from the body graph goes through. The 35 is all about gaining experiences, and the experiences that they are gaining are through routines. And the fifth energy is about a humanitarian, natural energy as well. Anybody who carries this energy really likes to have a regular routine, and if things are out of the ordinary, it could be tough. So you have the 35, which is trying to get a lot of experiences and really exciting, adventurous. And then you have the 5 energy, which, like I just said, is all about routine. So this could be a little bit of a conflict between the two energies. And then you put in the gate 63 and the gate 64, and the gate 64 is considered, any gates in the head are considered dreaming gates. So you have somebody who's dreaming about experiences and getting a lot of experience and exciting events, but they potentially may not even be going out and doing things because the routine or the need for familiarity may be overwhelming. And then having it in the third line, this could be somebody who is experimenting with that. So that could potentially get this person out of being too fearful to go out and experience new things. As I said about the head gates, there's always a potential to get lost in their head and have so many questions that it's almost impossible to just get out of it and start to move. And because the gate 63 is all about logic, there could be this sense of things needing to be logical in order for them to really accept it. And when it's mixed with the 64, which is considered confusion before the epiphany, there are going to be built-in conflicts with this incarnation cross. And synchronicity works in life, and that's something that's part of a lot of our lives, and we really need to pay attention to what we are given as we go along, especially with the gate 55. The gate 55 is something that's going to lead this person along the path of where they need to be, and the gate 55 is in the unconscious sun, and this is about surrender to the flow of life and surrender to what they see and what is. Now, what happened when I pulled out this chart and I started to work with this chart is I picked up a book that I hadn't looked at in a long time. And when I opened the book, the name Dion Fortune sort of stood out for me. Now, I'd heard that name before, but I didn't really know what it meant. And so what I did was went to discover who exactly this person was. What was really interesting and showed me once more about the synchronicity in life was that this particular person is Dion Fortune was somebody who had the exact same incarnation cross as this person. Dion Fortune was a British occultist, Kabbalist, and ceremonial magician. She was also a novelist and a author. She was one of the first people that actually contacted or believed they were contacting the Ascendant Masters. She was a person that initiated the Society of the Inner Light. So I just wanted to mention this because there might be some information that finding out more about this person could help this subscriber. And if that doesn't resonate, that's perfectly fine. And the last thing to talk about with this chart is all about the Saturn and Jupiter. So in the Saturn, we have the gate 2, and we also have the gate 27 in the unconscious Saturn. So the gate 2 is all about direction and knowing your direction in life. And when it's in the Saturn, that means that there's potential for this person to know their direction in life, but really get sidetracked or off their path. So there's this inner knowledge about where to go and how to get there. And a lot of times they may be diverted. Now, what they can be diverted from, and it's related to the energy of the 27, which is in their unconscious Saturn. So the caring energy of somebody with a 27 is a very helping energy. They're always trying to help people. They're always trying to be there for people. And when they have the whole channel, the 50, 27, 50, it really means that this person is always feeling responsible for other people and a lot of caring. But what happens in this energy is that they can get off their path of where they're exactly supposed to be by always putting other people before them and other people before their purpose in life. So that's the Saturn. So once they get through that, then they can get their Jupiter rewards. And the Jupiter rewards are that they will figure out what's worth struggling for in life. And when you figure out what's worth struggling for in life, you can give that information to other people so that they can see that there truly is a beauty in struggle. People don't always understand that if you are just given everything in life and you really don't have to work hard for it, or everything is just laid on your lap and there's just not an effort given, you just don't appreciate it as much. When you climb a mountain and every step is an effort and it's been tough, and a lot of times you don't feel you could actually get to the top of the mountain, but eventually you get to the mountain. The exhilaration you feel knowing that you actually accomplished that task is worth more than millions and millions of dollars. And so that is exactly the gift that Jupiter will give this person, knowing that no matter what, they stuck the course and they overcame, and the struggle was worth it because it gave them the gift that they really wanted, to really know what was worth struggling for and what was just a waste of time. And by doing this, they're going to be able to show people what they can do and to never give up on something that is really important to you or something that is your dream. And if you also look at the other Jupiter, you have the 50. And with that, that's all about the gift of knowing what you're responsible for and knowing that no matter what, you have the ability to take care of yourself as well as taking care of other people. And then this is all about letting go when it's the right time. The gate 50 can also be about rebellion. So this is about rebelling against the rules when it's the right thing to do. Having a Saturn that's in a caring gate or related to caring and a tribal energy can be pretty tough energy, but really it is worth the effort that when you push through that energy and realize that you can care for other people as well as caring for yourself, and that the secret to life and the energies we have in our body graph and energies in our lives is all about balance. So that's the end of the charts for this month. It was a little bit longer than normal, but I just went with the flow of the charts and that's where it brought me. So if you want to have your chart looked at or considered to be looked at, you can inbox me at denise.mathew@yahoo.com and just give me all your details, your birthday, the birth time, and also the place you were born. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next month.